Okay, perfect. Ready to go.
Good morning, all. Thank you for attending this meeting. We're here with Mr. Andriy Hevko, member of Ukraine Central Election Commission, Yevstihnieiev Andrii, Ukraine Central Election Commission, Gerais DeMarinis, Director of Candidacy and Campaign Finance for Maryland State Board Elections. Also, Timothy Karpov, Deputy Head of the International Cooperation Department of the Central Election Commission of Ukraine. Also, Sabrina Braga from Regional Electoral Court from the state of Minas Gerais, Brazil. I'm Marcelo Peregrino. I'll be your host today, a moderator from Transparency Latin America, and also president of CAOESTE. It's a great pleasure to have such an incredible and diversified group to talk a little bit about the organization of elections. The idea of a Zoom meeting came about and during the elections in Estonia. Me, Gerais, and Andrii were there attending the mission. And as we discussed, the problems and challenges in the elections seem very much alike, such as the integrity, public trust, the misinformation, the general attacks on the electoral bodies, democratic backsliding, technology, and also the regulation of social media, and so on. So without further ado, I will ask you to comment on the issues and on your initial considerations. I give the word to Hevko, please. May we start with you? Or Andrii?
Okay, sure, we can start. Thank you very much for inviting us for this meeting. It's a great pleasure to see you again. It was a great pleasure to meet you in Estonia. By the way, today we had one more meeting with our foreign colleagues concerning voting and the possibilities to use it in Ukraine and in Moldova in particular. We discussed this issue in details. And for sure, it is very interesting for us to start to establish and to go on our cooperation in different directions, because as I know, it is maybe the first one intercontinental meeting for CEC of Ukraine, and it is very interesting for us. We are very interested in real, not formal, but real cooperation with Southern American countries, with the USA, of course, too, and with its states. So if it is possible, I want to underline some problems which we are faced with for this moment, and maybe to share this information with you, and maybe you will have a possibility to use it while preparing some proposals concerning our possible cooperation directions. As you know, is the second year of full-scale aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. But we hope for better, and we feel that, and we hope that soon this war will be ended by the victory, of course, and then we will need to organize and conduct two national elections. They are presidential and parliamentary elections. And of course, now we are trying to prepare for these elections. it's not very easy. We have to find out possible ways of solving or to a lot of some problems which are caused by this cruel war. At first, you know that this war influenced a lot of on the number of internally displaced Ukrainians and who were forced to move from eastern Ukrainian regions to central and western regions. Of course, we have a large number of refugees abroad, and we unfortunately, we suppose that they will live abroad even after the war will be ended. We have significant damages to our civil infrastructure, including electoral infrastructure, because we use different buildings, civil buildings, for establishing polling stations in them. And we have to solve these problems now. I want to pay you attention at first to the problem of our Ukrainians abroad. I want to pay you attention to one example, which to my mind describes the whole situation rather good. For example, in Poland, our main or one of our main Western friends, there are now nearly 2 million Ukrainians who were forced to move abroad because of this war. And we suppose that there will be nearly 1 million voters in Poland when we will have national elections in Ukraine, first after-war elections. And according to our current legislation, the polling stations abroad can be only in the buildings of consulates and embassies of Ukraine. And for example, in Poland, there are only four polling stations where Ukrainians can vote. And of course, if we talk about, for example, some thousands of people, it is okay. And if we are talking about 1 million people, it means that nearly 250,000 voters for one polling station, you can understand that it is impossible to provide every voter with the right to vote physically. And it is really a rather big problem for us. So now we are trying to learn the experience of different countries. For example, we have rather good communication with electoral body of Bosnia and Herzegovina. As you know, they had some similar problems after the war in Yugoslavia. But of course, unfortunately, we can't compare the situation in Ukraine now and even the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, because we have much more, much full-scale conflict. And of course, we have much more different damages caused by this conflict. So we will be thankful to you if you will have a possibility to help us somehow to maybe to prepare or to find out decisions which we really can use in our situation. I understand that it is rather difficult. It is rather difficult to understand the number of problems which we have, but we really will be very thankful to you if you will help us somehow. And of course, we are talking rather active about the possibilities of E and I voting, but we understand that we have to be rather careful with implementing of this type of elections, because the main aim of our activity is to have really free, fair, and trustful elections. It's very important for us. It's very important for the legitimacy of our new elected state power. And it is very important for Ukraine in general, because it depends a lot from the state power on our way to rebuilding, on our way to joining European Union, and on our recovery in general. So maybe this is the main topic I want to share with you, and I will say one more time that we will be very thankful on behalf on Central Election Commission of Ukraine. I can say it, that we will be very thankful to you if you will help us in solving these problems somehow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andriy. Jared, the floor is yours, please, for your initial statements.
Sure. I think, well, I mean, the problems that are facing U.S. elections kind of pale in comparison to what Andriy is facing with the Ukrainian presidential election upcoming this year, and dealing with the war. And my thoughts are with you and your family and your country, just to let you know. I think what we're facing is, I think, a lot of the presence of social media has had a major impact, I think, on the electoral process. And it has impacted it, I think, in a negative way. One, it breathes fire to a lot of more conspiracy theories, and it creates this, I would say, echo chamber for people to receive whatever news that they want to hear or believe, and then they can find those sources there. So they don't trust other sources of information. They only trust what they want to trust. And it creates this circular logic, which is basically they come in with this belief, and then they find sources on social media to bolster that belief, whether it is factual or not. I think that the other portion about social media is we have issues with, of course, foreign influence then trying to take control over our electoral process here and swaying voters in the United States. We had the biggest one, of course, was in 2016, but it has always been prevalent since. Maryland was a targeted state in 2016 with the Russian attacks on foreign influence in that presidential election. I think, and then of course, social media also, it doesn't allow for really good vetting of news. So you get a lot of fake news websites that are treated just as equal as legitimate press organizations. And once again, it gets to this whole idea that it creates that echo chamber. I can find some sort of source there. I think at the end here, we are also getting into a realm now for deep fakes, which are extremely difficult and so realistic that that people now, before it was always like seeing is believing was the saying. Now you can't even say that because I'm seeing something and I can't believe it because the actual words that the politician or anybody is actually saying is not even true. And we are seeing more and more of this now with AI and these chatbots that are coming out there. So this is kind of the prevalence that I've seen. And also the bots too, to help disseminate this information as quickly as possible. So it goes viral in an instant because you have the bots that will push it out and the algorithms there. So one of the things is that it definitely has to be a regulated type of area here because this sows the distrust in the system. And when you start sowing this distrust and politicians are not really held accountable for their statements or the reporting out there, that leads to a lack of respect for the institutions. And the lack of respect for the institutions basically comes down to that, we have death threats against my comrades, across the country here. And you have issues then, of course, with the lack of trust in if the institution is not respected, then you lead to the lack of trust in the voting methods. And in the United States, we have a whole big controversy over mail-in voting versus in-person voting. And that, in-person is more secure than mail-in, which is a falsehood. Mail-in, since COVID, has really taken off. Before, it used to be about 5 to 6% of elections in Maryland, people that would be using that type of method. No one was really thinking that it was untrustworthy at the time before COVID. But then since then, when we had an all mail-in election, and we have subsequently done a hybrid election since, it's becoming more and more popular. The convenience of it, and all that you get it at, you can vote at your leisure, is the convenience factor has been a big boom for this, and it is possibly about a third of our voters now use mail-in voting versus in-person voting. And then, of course, then the other controversy then about method and is early voting versus election day voting, trying to accommodate more and more voters, by expanding opportunities, by having more days of voting. People believe, like, it leads to mistrust in the system, and that something untoward is ongoing, which is the furthest thing from the truth. And one of the other things about problems facing the U.S. election is I would say, voter apathy part here, because, what you have is, with the public distrust in the system and the institution and the voting method, it leads to less turnout. And then you have candidates that don't accept the election results because they feel as though that they have been cheated rather than that they've just lost. And voters take that out by staying at home. Turnout in non-presidential election years is dismal compared to other countries across the world. And another factor into this is what is I'm not sure, it's more of an American issue, is the idea of gerrymandering, where these districts are drawn so that the primaries kind of decide the outcome of the general. And that's where usually the fight is more in the primary election rather than the actual general election when everyone can vote on it. So you have a very small group of voters deciding the outcomes of consequential elections. So I think those are kind of the biggest right now that problems that are facing us, is this distrust and the social media, deepfake, and those areas there that are brand new technologies. And one of the things is you want to make sure that the technology, when doing regulation here, these are also methods for campaigns to use to communicate well with their voters. So it's a balancing act when we get into this space here, especially for regulations, to make sure that we're not necessarily cutting off these methods for campaigns to use, because they are effective tools of communication. And that's how also the younger voters, that's what they want to communicate. Everyone has a phone, everyone's on these platforms, which is why they're wildly successful. So, it's a balancing act, making sure that you want to make sure that the campaigns are held accountable for their actions, and that they're not, just irresponsibly tweeting or basically promoting deepfake videos here, but at the same time allowing for them to use these things. I've been trying to work this space a lot recently as well, making sure that we can kind of work through it and hold them accountable. But I think that those are kind of the current problems that are facing us, because with this and the social media and the deep fakes, the lack of acceptance of the results then leads to the camps never, from whatever side, either side doesn't accept the results. And it's a bridge that, starts tearing apart the fabrics of the democracy, because without the acceptance of it, you can never govern for those years there. And then basically we'll just wait for the next 4 years, because we're just going to sit this out, not govern correctly, or not want to compromise with the other party, and then wait until we win our election. So it's a troubling trend right now, and moving forward. And you saw it a little bit when we were over in Estonia, with the lack of trusting of certain voting methods is there with one political party and stuff. So it is definitely something that is becoming more of a global phenomenon.
Thank you, Gerard. Sabrina, please, your initial statement.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, CAOESTE. Thank you, Transparencia Electoral and the Central Electoral Commission of Ukraine for listening to me and listen the Brazilian experience in these issues. In despite of the fact that Brazil is in a huge battle against the misinformation, it's not so hard and so sad as the situation in Ukraine. And we feel so sorry for that. And we hope this horrible war ends as soon as possible. We face the same problems as US. Prior to the implementation of the electronic voting system in Brazil, electoral authorities deal with several cases of fraudulent elections. In addition to economic and political abuse, which unfortunately still exist, but are severely punished by the electoral courts, such fraud also occurred during the counting of votes. For just over 20 years, the electronic ballot box and the electoral court enjoyed the trust of a large part of the Brazilian population. Considering that we have more than 472,000 ballot boxes distributed in more than 5,500 cities in Brazil and 181 abroad, and approximately 156 million voters holding elections of continental proportions and present in 100% of ballot boxes counted in less than 12 hours, have always been a source of pride for our people. But then came the age of misinformation, and with it, Brazilian electoral authorities and the electronic voting system are suffering a deep blow to their credibility, either the democracy here. In my view, until the 2018 elections, the Federal Electoral Court underestimated the greater threat that misinformation posed to our young democracy. We are in a democracy since 1984. That year, 2018, we had a very tense election in which people involved in the electoral process organization, public servants, were questioned and attacked all the time, which generated a state of discouragement and fatigue after the process. The then elected president, who during the entire campaign questioned the electronic voting system, at the graduation ceremony, the graduation when he was able to become president, in a few words, praised the work of the Electoral Court, which, in my view, seemed to justify his victory. After all, if the system was flawed, his victory would not be legitimate. After the year 2018, the Federal Electoral Court did its homework and began to do a deep and decentralized work, to combat disinformation, and here we say confrontation. This work is hard. We must work much more because every election and every year, people create another fake news about the system, about the electoral authorities, and candidates creating fake news about the other candidate. And that's why I said that we are facing the same problems as US. Because here in Brazil, they disseminate misinformation and they fight against the electoral authorities, the democracy, and we have a small group that don't accept the results of the elections. I think you all saw on TV or newspapers or internet what happened in Brazil in January 8th, when some people went to Palácio do Planalto, Planalto Palace, and another important places in Brasilia to fight against the democracy, but they said that they were fighting for democracy, but not accepting the results of the elections. I think it's a very hard fight that we have to do, and a very huge problem that we have to face. But the Electoral Court are preparing their public servants and their authorities to give answers to the questions and to finish all fake news that could put this process in doubt. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. And the first question will be addressed to you. I think we have like a common ground here. We have a very big problem of fake news and the absence of trust, of public trust, and to construct that. Sabrina, I would like you to tell me, how did Brazil dealt with fake news? Were the international missions important? What's been your experience in the Electoral Court in Minas Gerais, please? Thank you.
Marcelo, now I'm working at the Federal Electoral Court, so I can say a little bit about how the Federal Court is facing this problem. The Federal Electoral Court, just a minute.
That's the National Court, right?
Yeah, the National Court, yeah. The National Court was deeply concerned about misinformation when the authorities understood that this was the major problem we face today. At that moment, it was very important to create a communication channel with the press and rely on it to deny the false news that was being disseminated. Another important step, in my view, was to prepare the thousands of public servants to explain how the electronic voting system works and why it's secure. Public servants went to the neighborhood associations and schools, for example, and demonstrated that the system deserved the trust of voters and that it continued to be a source of pride for Brazil. In 2022, the National Electoral Court created a special advisory to combat misinformation. The advisory monitored before and during the elections to deny fake news as soon as it began to be disseminated. Digital influencers and other celebrities were invited to meet the National Electoral Court headquarters, and they produced secure content about the electronic voting system viewed by millions of Brazilians, because these digital influencers and celebrities, they have millions of followers on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and other social medias. The permanent program to combat misinformation of the National Electoral Court was one of the winners of the first edition of the Global Electoral Justice Network Award in October 2022. The Misinformation Observatory of the Complutense University of Madrid and the Organization of the American States classified the performance of the Brazilian Electoral Court as exemplary. The international observation missions brought to us and to our authorities issues that still deserve improvement by the Brazilian state, such as the lack of women and Black people in politics. They're also very important in reinforcing the integrity of the elections in Brazil with the international community.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you, Marcelo.
Andrii, how's the voting system in Ukraine? And what's the most difficult challenge and task to Ukraine besides this horrible war?
If you are interested in our electoral system, which we use for example, for national elections, I think that it will be interesting for everybody to get some information about our parliamentary elections, because we have two types of national elections. They are parliamentary and presidential. Presidential, as you understand, we have majority system because only one person can be elected on the presidential position. And as for parliamentary elections, if our parliament won't make any amendments to our current electoral code, we will have 100% proportional system when only political parties will have a possibility to make their candidates lists, and we will have two lists. One of them is all national list, and the candidates from this list will also participate in electoral regions, which are for today the same as our Ukraine territorial units of Ukraine on the level of so-called oblast or region. And if I'm not mistaken, there will be two regions, electoral regions in Kiev. Maybe I'm mistaken. Of course, Andrii will review this issue now and will help me and will correct me. I think that, of course, there are a lot of pro and contra if we are talking about each type of electoral system, because it is really so. There is no, I think, to my mind, there is no the 100% perfect electoral system, and of course we can face with some problems using any of them. But as for after-war elections, to my mind, to my personal opinion, the proportional system is the best one, because it will be rather difficult to renew our electoral infrastructure, and even in a sphere of printing ballots. And if we, for example, on our latest parliamentary elections, the 50% of our parliament was elected according to the proportional system, and 50% was elected according to the majority system. So we have 199 deputies elected in electoral regions, and 2,025 deputies elected by the lists of candidates. We had no possibility to organize and conduct elections in 26 electoral districts because they are situated in Crimea and on temporary occupied territories of Lugansk and Donetsk region. And to my mind, it's the not the best, but the best in our situation solution to organize and conduct elections according to proportional system. But I cannot say for sure that we will have such electoral system till the end of this war, because, as you understand, a lot of depends on different on our politicians. And as for our official position, the official position of CEC of Ukraine, the issue of electoral system is not a legal issue, it's a more issue of politicians. So we are trying not to participate in these discussions because we understand that each type of system can be used, and we are ready to provide the as high as possible level of our services for any type of electoral system which will be chosen by our parliament. But of course, proportional one is the most comfortable solution for post-war elections.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. I like to notice here that we have Andriy. It's a friend of ours and also an important electoral agent from the US, so to speak. And I also noticed the presence of the judge Caetano from Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. Jared, you talked about gerrymandering in US as a central problem. You don't have in America a central electoral body. How do you prevent these local powers to intervene in the elections? Is that an issue? I'm seeing that the Supreme Court has been very strict on ruling over the gerrymandering. So what would you tell us about it?
Yes. So as our Constitution has basically ceded the federal agencies. There is no real federal control over the electoral process or or election administration. The states have basically control over those processes, and it has led to every state having different rules about elections and eligibility to votes as well. You have, some that are much more progressive in making sure that, making every eligible individual over the age of 18 available to vote. And then there are other states that have taken a restrictive approach on voting rights, making sure that, if a person was ever convicted of a felon, or they have to have ID to show up to polling places. So, each state has their own control over the process. This is how kind of the system that we've had here. The federal agency, which is the Election Assistance Commission, is basically an advisory agency for the states, a warehouse for all the information there, and provides grant money to help states with some of the current issues that we're facing. It was for modernization of voting equipment back in 2000 when it was first passed as an agency, which was the HAVA, which is the Help America Vote Act. It came out of the 2000 election, and in 2002 it was passed. So it was always trying to help modernize the election process, and that's where the federal agencies kind of come in, which is they help give money to the states to move forward. But then it's the states that have complete control over how the money is spent, for what purpose, or they have what type of system that they want to purchase. There is some benefits to this by having each state kind of go through their own methods. They have each state can kind of, I would say, tweak their system, highlight new technologies so that other states can follow afterwards to see how successful it is. But yes, we do have all different elections. The other part too, which is the gerrymandering part that I mentioned, yes, the state legislatures have the ability to draw the lines, and they have, by doing so, they have control over how the electoral, I would say, outcomes are determined. When they have all the data that is there, and some states, it's by the legislature is the one that draws the lines. Anne is from a state, I know Anne quite well. She's from California, where they have independent agencies that draw the lines there. So there's a whole big movement now to kind of try to make sure that after the census, which we just performed, that these lines are a little bit more, I would say, that they're not predetermined. And when I'm talking about predetermined, just that one political party dominates the lines, or in the past they've used it for racial discrimination, where they've drawn lines to dilute minority power, or they've packed them all in one district to basically give them only one seat rather than having the power over multiple seats. So it is definitely an issue. We've always kind of, every time a census rolls around, lawsuits naturally follow from it. And, we were fortunate that Maryland was congressional elections. They only had to redraw the lines once. So it was for the congressional seats, and our state representative seats were constitutional under Maryland's Constitution. So we were very fortunate rather than other ones there. But if you, they basically make these lines to control, you know, how the legislatures will appear in the future. And then, like I said earlier, it does lead to some sort of voter apathy, because unlike representative politics, our system is first past the post. So if with that type of election process, you know, whether you win by 1 or by 50 million, you win the seat, and you represent all the seat, not any sort of portion of it. So it's a different mindset as well with that.
Well, thank you so much, Jared. We're working towards the end. I would ask you to make your final statements, but try to address 2 things that I think are very important. The funding of democracy, you know, it's always a complex theme. And also, what are the directions and the guidelines of the corporation? How can the agencies, the electoral bodies, can communicate and can improve its own election? And we're going to start here with Sabrina, please.
This is my final statement, right?
Yes.
Okay. We think we are facing huge problems, and I think that we need to be next to the people to give the right information to make the most clear elections as possible. Clear in about the news and the informations and how the system works, not clean about the results, because the results are clean since the implementation of the electronic system of votes. And I think that we have a huge election here in Brazil. The issues are as huge as the election and the number of voters, and the problems are big too. But the authorities here are now, they know what's happening. They know that we have this war to fight against the misinformation, because I'm talking about misinformation because this is the biggest problem that we have, but not the only one. We have another problem that the missions saw in our country, that is the not political participation of women and Black people and indigents and whatever. We have to fight against this too. And I agree with Andrii when he says that the proportional system is the best system, not the ideal, but the best, because with this system, we can have more different kind of people making laws and making this country works. And I know that the Brazilian authorities are working so hard to make the system be nude by the population, and to make people participate in a right way in this process, because we need the people of Brazil working with us and not against us, because we work for the people and we need that people knows it, and the candidates too. And I thank very much for this meeting. It was very important to know more about the Ukraine elections, because here we listen a lot of things about US elections, for example. Jared, here we know all the problems that you face, and sometimes it's hard for us to understand that system that we used to sing that song from ABBA, the winner takes it all. And it's a mess for us here in Brazil because it's very different from our system. But it was very interesting to know more about Ukraine and the problems that you are facing. And I can say in the name of Brazilian authorities that we are here to give any information that can help Ukraine to face this problem in the next election.
Thank you, Sabrina. Gerais, please, your final statement.
Sure. Well, thank you, Sabrina, too. I enjoyed listening about the Brazilian experience as well. I think one of the points that you wanted to talk about, too, was about public financing. And money in politics has always been a major issue in the state, in US elections. I mean, I think our last presidential election cost over $1 billion. You know, if you look at these campaigns now, they're, you know, the amount of money that they raise and spend in a small period of time, you know, rivals, you know, major industries, you know, the amount of profits. I mean, even Maryland, the cost of elections have steadily increased. Gubernatorial elections are in the tens of millions of dollars, and they do that with 2 years. They raise about, you know, close to $20 million, and then they spend it all. I mean, and we're a small state compared to other states where it's, you know, closer to, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars that are being spent on it. And you have Supreme Court cases that, you know, prevent a lot of regulation into the field. And that's not even talking about independent expenditures where there's unlimited sums of money that are being spent and raised on that front for just all to influence voters. And, you know, one of the I would say, counters to this to remove some of the money in politics and to bring back at least some sort of, I would say, voter participation and trust in the system again is this idea of public financing and using public dollars to help finance candidates. And, you know, we've passed some legislation post the major Supreme Court decision. And it's, you know, we're now in 4 counties and our big city, Baltimore City, and we revamped our governor's program too for it. And it's, you know, to have voluntary low dollar contribution limit. But, you know, once you get a certain amount of support with numbers of individuals from your area to, you know, qualify for the funding. And a couple of things was that the idea is to empower the average voter, that they give these low dollars, that they feel then that they have made a difference in the electoral process, and it gives them a stake in it. And giving to campaigns directly correlates to voting. So, you know, once I start, even if it's, you know, a small dollar, and we're talking about $5, $6 here, but that turns into more money for the campaign, that average voter is now, you know, going to participate in the process. And hopefully it will kind of help break the voter apathy portion of it. And, you know, I think as we get into this here, I think that's a very key thing. We do work. You wanted to talk about a little bit about cooperation and groups. I do work closely with nonpartisan advocates and the political parties here, because you have to help figure out how to disseminate against the disinformation out there. And, they're the ones that have they're the ones with the bigger social media presence than ourselves here. And, when you make sure that if you can give them the correct information, that it will be able to be disseminated appropriately to it. And, once you have the political parties and that they understand what the rules are and that it's being evenly applied, hopefully we can break this cycle of the distrust in the institution and also the problem with fake media and I would say, conspiracy theories that are out there about stolen elections. And it's very difficult to fight a narrative that is impossible to disprove, right? I mean, we say the elections, everyone voted that was legally eligible to vote. The machines counted it. It was done accordingly. We have audits of all the machines here. We have audits of the election results. And, the candidates that participated met all the thresholds. Everything was according to plan here. But, you have people that just don't believe it. And they have their narrative. And it's one of those things that we have to break this cycle in order to prevent it from taking hold. And the problem was, in the past, it was, there was always these conspiracy theories, but they were in the smaller outer portions of it. They never had the microphone and the amplification that they do now with social media and fake news. I mean, and also with these deep fakes here, the fact that you can change a person and have them say whatever that you want them to say, or these fake quotes that are out there, that, it gets troubling. And, we say this, and we know that we've had foreign influence, going into into elections. I feel for the Ukrainian authorities here, because of, with the idea of internet voting and trying to figure out how to make people vote across different places and times and areas is an overwhelming challenge, with the idea that you also know that you have a country that's next door that is going to just try to sow deceit and distrust into the entire process. And I think Sabrina was right about the idea of you need to have some sort of national pride in the electoral process. And that's kind of right now is a little bit missing. And that, before, every country was more like, this was our way of electing officials here. And we all took pride in just our own way, even if it was unique to us or unique to them. And now we just don't have that because of the distrust and the animosity just under the administration of it. There was always animosity or discord between political parties, that's fine. But when you're actually at the administration level of a person counting, it's really, it gets to the core of it all. And so with that, hopefully there are things that we can move forward. And I would say making sure that we have to regulate those spaces. And the other part too, which is one of the things about the deep fakes and the social media is, fines and our normal method of enforcement may not be working. We have to look at this from a new perspective. And one of the things that I did in Maryland was with posts or with illegal or unverified campaign material out there, which was to sway voters on social media platforms, was fining doesn't matter, because that individual could be somewhere completely outside of my jurisdiction. I can give them a $10 million fine. I know I'll never collect it. However, the only real impact that I could have is to force that post or to force that ad to come down. And, because that's how it gets viral. So we have to kind of look at things in a different manner to make sure that when we're fighting these viral posts that are filled with fake news, that we're not just going after it in our normal method here. We have to look at it in a different method. And so I think that those are kind of my takeaways here, and to move forward, and happy to always continue the discussion. And once again, to the my Ukrainian friends here, it was great seeing you again on this, and whatever I can do to help support you in your election upcoming, I'd be happy to, because it is tragic what is going on, but I'm here to help and support, and and may you'll be victorious in the future on that. And Marcelo, thank you again for organizing this. I appreciate this and having the opportunity to speak with such an esteemed panel. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jared. Andy, please give your final statement, my friend.
Можливо, я. Чи чути переклад?
Mr. Hevko.
Так, колеги, чи чути переклад? Добре? Перш за все, дякую за можливість зустрітися. Насправді, це дуже важлива зустріч для нас. І в контексті проблем, що ми можемо робити разом, насправді, мені видається, що повинна ці питання, які ми сьогодні підняли, зокрема питання дезінформації, з цією проблемою ми можемо тільки разом боротися. Насправді тут необхідне широке коло співпраці між різними органами адміністрування виборів, щоб ми спільно напрацьовували регуляції в цій сфері і спілкувалися з відповідними провайдерами соціальних мереж для того, щоб ці регуляції якимсь чином діяли не тільки виключно в якихось країнах, а вони поширювалися на всі країни, бо цей виклик дезінформації, він стосується всіх країн. І кожна країна має свій негативний досвід вже під час виборів, і як вже сьогодні зазначалося, і це і в Бразилії, і в Сполучених Штатах Америки. Тому я думаю, що випрацьовування якихось хороших прикладів боротьби з дезінформацією, цими прикладами треба ділитися і спільно комунікувати з відповідними провайдерами в соціальних мереж. Але насправді ми зараз стоїмо ще на такому етапі, що ми зараз стикнемося з більшим викликом, з викликом штучного інтелекту, який буде генерувати дезінформацію в десятки, сотні разів швидше. І це буде ще один виклик для нас. Ми ще цього не відчули, ніхто з нас, але ми можемо бачити, як це вже починає працювати. І думаю, що в питаннях виборчих процесах це буде ще більший вплив. І тут це нові виклики, які перед нами постануть. І зрозуміло, що ми зі своєї сторони в тій ситуації, коли в нас ще триває війна, і я вірю, що ми переможемо в цій війні, але Росія почала цю війну не 2 роки тому, ця війна вже триває довший час, і Америка в тому числі вже відчувала цю війну, яку веде Росія ще на минулих президентських виборах. Бо ті факти, які були оприлюднені, і вплив російський через соціальні мережі, через дезінформацію, він відчувається по всьому світу. І дуже прикро, що станом сьогодні ми бачимо, що навіть в об'єднаній організації, в Організації Об'єднаних Націй в Радбезі головує країна, яка протистоїть демократії у всьому світі. Не тільки боротьба, яку ми маємо в Україні, війна, яку ми маємо в Україні. І тому насправді нам треба об'єднуватися і на всіх можливих площадках боротися з цим ворогом демократії, яким є сьогодні Росія. Ми на полі бою, Україна бореться, але весь світ повинен також включитися в різних напрямках, і в тому числі в площині дезінформації, ставити на місце цього ворога.
Thank you so much. I have no words to describe this join together this meeting. I give you all my solidarity to our friends in Ukraine. We're together. So in Transparency Latin America, we do whatever we can to help you and to continue on having meetings like this, maybe a presential one, to join you and to have you with us in our missions. We'll be in Spain next month, so here's already an invitation. And thank you so much, Jared and Sabrina, for your inputs and your knowledge. And I'm very, very thankful for you for our meeting this morning. Thank you,
Marcelo. Marcelo, can I say only few words? I want to thank you, to thank Jared for participation in this meeting. Maybe our first meeting was rather as something like a prototype of future meetings when we will have, for example, the same topic and we will discuss it in details. But to my mind, it's really very important. We are very thankful for all of you for your support, because even organizing of such meeting is a type of support, of real support for us during these difficult times. And now I am sitting at home in Bucha, and I can observe Hostomel airfield from my window. And this reminds me about the very stormy days of 2022. And now I see that the spring is coming, that we are still strong, we are back at our homes, and it shows that everything will be good, and we will go on our for 150% peaceful cooperation in different spheres, because democracy and is in opposition to any type of aggression and to any type of war, hybrid one or Cold War or such hot war as we have now. And I want to ask you if you will have maybe any ideas, any proposals, how can we go on our cooperation? We will be very thankful, and be sure that we will participate. We will make our all possible types of contribution in our common activities, and so be free and do not hesitate to contact us, to disturb us, to ask us to help, to participate. We will be very glad, and we will try our best to make a really useful contribution in any type of your activities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys. I see you later until the next time.
Bye.